Hello, and welcome to the 38th episode of the Comic Watchers Show. Comic Watchers Show is brought to you by comic-watch.com, your one-stop shop for comic book news, reviews, and sometimes things we eschew. I just made that up, because it rhymed. Welcome, I'm your host this week, Matt. I'm coming from Oklahoma City, subbing for our usual host, Cody White, who is dealing with parental responsibility like a good human being tonight. Cody, we miss you. We're also missing John Jack from Seattle, Washington this week, but with me is Brian Arbizo.
Hello from Portland.
And Nicholas Osborne.
Hi.
Woo! Yay! So we've got some pretty good books we're going to cover this week. We'll get to those momentarily as per usual. But first, Brian, what do you have for us on news?
All right. So just announced as I was looking for news, Brian K. Vaughan's Paper Girls gets a full series ordered on Amazon Studios. I don't know if that's actually been announced yet on our website because I've been AMA, but comicbook.com just released it. In other news, DC's Black Label is going to deliver new tales of the Joker and the Question. That should be coming out sometime soon, October 30th and November 30th. And that's by Lemire and Cohen and
Sienkiewicz.
that guy. He's great. I love his
Yes,
stuff.
yes.
I just can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry. I'm an idiot.
You know, it's funny, if you follow him on Twitter, his Twitter handle is, it's pronounced Sienkiewicz, phonetically for all of us.
I think I actually
Thanks, Bill.
follow him. Thanks, Bill. Okay. Also, big news, not really big news, is Todd Phillips, who's directing the Joker movie, announced that Joker isn't going to have anything to do with the comic books. I mean, okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad movie or... I mean, let's be honest. None of the movies have really went off of the comic books themselves. It's an adaptation of what it's going to be. People are flipping out about it. Just enjoy the movie. Like, if you would just enjoy the movie, it would be 10 times better than expecting a long history of what you've already read. I want a new story. I don't want to see something that I've read a million times or been retold, etc., etc. Shut up and enjoy it. Or don't. I don't care. Sorry. It's the wine talking at this point. It's been a long day. To prove that news is a little bit slow, even a bunch of websites are reporting that Superman could easily take Batman. According to some interview that Henry Cavill said, okay, that's cool. I mean, that's how, this has been a top story for almost a week now. So that tells you how slow the comic book world news is. But all in all, that's what's going on in the news. Also, we'll probably have a lot more news coming up because San Diego Comic-Con is right around the corner. I believe it starts next Thursday, possibly ceremonies on Wednesday. I'm actually looking forward to it, so expect a slow news week just based on that because everybody's saving their big finales, their big news for San Diego Comic-Con, which we were all supposed to go. I think we said this last year, and we're not. So if you're there, tweet us and let us know what's going on because we don't know. We're not going. That's all I have.
Maybe next year. Thank you, Brian. All right, so we've got 3 books this week. We have Batman Universe #1 by Brian Michael Bendis and Nick Darrington, Invisible Woman #1 by Mark Waid and Mattia de Iluis, and Second Coming from Ahoy Comics by Mark Russell, Richard Pace, and Leonard Kirk. Guys, what do you want to get into first? Hairy theological things or fun Batman stories?
I think we should tackle the one that we're all kind of on different pages on.
So, Second Coming?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get our theology on.
Hold on, by the way, before you continue, Matt, Nick is so ready for this conversation. He was ready for the fight. He was even okay, let's get into it. That was hilarious.
I am ready for this one. This one, it was so opposite of what I thought was going to happen. But
okay. So, all right. Well, yeah. So, Second Coming tells the story, and it is a satire. Let me preface with that, as is everything that Mark Russell does. It has a satirical bent to it. That tells the story of Jesus, yes, that Jesus, being brought back to Earth in modern days and being paired up with a superhero by his father, God, to learn how to be a better God. It was originally supposed to be published by Vertigo, and apparently sometime since Preacher stopped being published, Vertigo lost its balls, and they said, no, we're not going to publish this satirical comic about Jesus. And so it wound up they gave the rights back to Mark Russell, and he shopped it over to Tom Pyre's Ahoy Comics, which I think is actually a great home for it, just given the level of quality material that Ahoy puts out, the fact that they're based on miniseries, it seems like a good home for it. So without further ado, I think we all have fairly different opinions on this book. Nick, go for it.
Okay, yeah, there was a lot of controversy on this book. There was news that it was coming out, and everything happened with the contract renegotiations that happened, and he shopped it around. And I didn't look too far into it or really read up on who was working on this or what that perspective was, but I thought that it was gonna go the opposite way. I went into it thinking that this was going to be a satirical book on religion, but it really wasn't. It didn't hit that because they couldn't go to the place that they needed to go for religion. It's a pro-Christian book, and he had to tiptoe around those requirements to meet that standard, and that held this book back from being an actual satire book. He talks in the end about it. He doesn't think the guy who volunteered to teach your Sunday school class has it nailed down on religion. And this is the guy who comes in who's 20 years younger than your Sunday school teacher with a hat on backwards and says, I'm cool now. But he's pushing the same message. He's doing the same thing. He wants to build this world that is not what really happens in the presence of religion. You don't see the impact of religion on the world, so it doesn't feel any sort of believable for the satire to work. It's just a point to push this agenda of a pro-Christian twist, and that held it back on so many levels, and it became apparent. I hit a wall after the introduction when I started to realize this isn't going to be what I thought it was. This wasn't the second coming to explore the impact of religion and what Jesus could be in that world. This was accept the world for how we believe it to be, and now you inject this new fun fantasy into it, and oh goodness, it failed on so many levels. And honestly, I don't blame Vertigo for not wanting to attach their name to it. I certainly wouldn't either. Not in the world that we live in today, the socio-political environment that we live in today. This isn't what I would want to put my name behind, because it's not a message that I think is relevant or necessarily all that important. What is the end goal to this? What are we doing with this satire? And he talks about it's to bring a positive spin on Christianity. At best, that's going to get people to read the Bible. And that introduces an entire new theological discussion on the impact of the Bible in our world. And you're not going to get away from that, because that's what he wanted to do with this book. And I didn't know that was his goal. I didn't piece that together until, like I said, a few pages in. But goodness, did he try to do that. And I grew up a Southern Baptist, so I understand when things get preachy. I was raised on it, and that it felt preachy because he couldn't take the story where it needed to go because he was forced to abide by these certain restrictions to push this agenda, and just made the book flop.
Let me ask a question, and granted, I didn't read the back matter like you did, so maybe my answer lies in there. But where are you getting that he was forced to push a certain agenda and adhere to certain strictures to the story?
Well, in the absence of what you see in the world that this Jesus inhabits, that you now have this world that, like we were talking about it in the Comic Watch chat, that is without the impact of Catholic priests and things like that, that we thought this book would go to in generic terms. But he doesn't go to any place like that. He can't. And why would you bring that into this book when your ultimate agenda is to get people to take a positive spin on Christianity? You're not going to take these issues head on because it ultimately restricts what you're trying to do. And what you're trying to do wasn't necessarily make a strong book. It was push this agenda. And this book served as a platform for it. That's about it.
Okay, I mean, I think that was really well thought out and a fair point. I've got a little bit of pushback that I'm going to get to in a minute, but first, Brian, what did you think about the book?
Matt, actually, I want to follow up with all of it because I think I kind of stand in the middle a little bit. So if you want to go first, and then I can.
Yeah, that's fine. So let me put this out there to start with. I'm an atheist, and I don't care who knows it. I'm not at a point in my life where I care to hide that fact or be ashamed or feel like I should be ashamed of that anymore. So I approach stuff like this with a pretty different mindset than a lot of people do. But I came into this, and like you, Nick, I had a pretty clear idea of where I thought it was going, what I thought it was doing. To me, that was confirmed in the opening pages. It's like, yeah, this is a good sharp jab at Christianity. Okay, it's not mean-spirited, but it's a funny spin, especially on the Old Testament stuff. The bit where he's talking about God put this tree right in the middle of the Garden of Eden and said, don't fucking touch the tree. And then, of course, they went and fucking touched the tree because God didn't know humans that well enough to... I just thought that was funny. And if nothing else, just clever. Where I differ, and again, I didn't read the back matter, so I didn't have time to marinate on the fact that I guess it is a pro-Christian book. I don't know, but I kind of think of that in terms of the same way that I think of the movie Dogma, which is very, very critical of the Catholic Church, but in the end is very pro-faith. And I don't have a problem with that, because faith implies, to me, that you have a personal set of rules and beliefs that you adhere to. And as long as none of those beliefs are be a dick to your fellow man, I don't have a problem with that. Where I have a problem is where you start getting these Bible thumpers coming in and telling everyone how to live and what to do. And they're not about their faith at all. They're about wanting to push their views on people. And earlier in our chat today, I commented on, I feel like this is a viewpoint on Christianity that's sorely needed in the world right now. I didn't mean that necessarily as an endorsement of my view and my beliefs, but rather just the fact that, and I don't want to get too far off in the weeds here, because this is a comic show, but evangelical Christianity is at a huge, huge inflection point right now. Yeah. And, something that's out there like this that's just saying, hey, just don't be a dick to people. That's a message that I'm fine with, even though I'm not religious. So it's disheartening now to know that this was intended to be a pro-Christianity book, whereas, because I think that in and of itself misses the point, or at least the point that I took from it.
Yeah, because ultimately the faith aspect of it, it's not a general note on faith. It's a very hard-driven Christianity, because it essentially ignores any other interpretation of faith. And it drives home that aspect that it's your perspective, it's what you bring into it. And the reality of the situation is people's perspectives create an impact on society. And
absolutely.
When you promote that idea that you just take this book out of you take what of it that you will, or pick out the parts that you like. We've done this so many times, and it is ultimately negative, in my opinion. This is not a discussion that we should really be having in 2019 in this world that we live in. Like,
well, I mean, if you want to get it, like, if you want to get hard and fast with the theological debate, then we could definitely do that.
but
when I've got more alcohol in me.
Trying to do like, that's not what this book seemed like it was marketed as.
I'll agree with you on that.
At the end of the day, that's what this book was predicated on. And that's ultimately where the discussion has to lie, because that's where he wants readers to go with this story, is to say, maybe I need to rethink, my view if it's negative towards Christianity in specific, and I need to open that up. He's driving home that point. So that's where the discussion seems to warrant.
And I mean, that's fair. I think it's a little hard to rush to judgment with there still being 5 issues of the series left. Like, there's still a ton of ground to cover. So, well, I definitely don't think that your point is invalid. I think maybe you're rushing to judgment just a little. I mean, maybe another issue or 2 in, but there's still a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, like that direction, though. He established that point, that world that he's going to build now, opposite of the reality of the situation. So it seems like it's just going to snowball from here. So it could.
I could be completely wrong. Hey, I'm open to it.
Right.
But I also think that there's enough potential for, and depending on interpretation, of course, for at least to give it another issue or 2, for me anyway, before I say, yeah, this, yay or nay on this one. But my big takeaway from this, theological issues aside, is I had the same feel from it as I do every other Mark Russell book I love, or that I've read, and that I love the concept, and then I read it, and I'm like, well, that was okay. At the end. It happened with Wonder Twins, it happened with Prez. I don't remember what other Mark Russell books are out there, but those are the main.
Kind of happening with Red Sonja right now. I'm catching up on that.
Oh, really? I even know he was writing Red Sonja. That seems like a terrible pairing.
I'll have to double check, but I believe that's who's on it.
Okay. So, Brian, what'd you think about it?
Real quick, Nick, do you like Red Sonja? Because I always wanted to kind of read it, but then kind of don't.
I do like Red Sonja. She's a cool character. She's got good stories. Where we had that discussion that Vampirilla arguably doesn't have that many good stories. You can find some really cool stuff with Red Sonja, especially Gail Simone's run is just amazing. And right now, I don't think that I believe it is Mark Russell who is taking. Yeah, he did the reboot recently, and now Bob Q's coming in as the artist in issue 8. But there's a mini going on right now called Birth of the She-Devil. Great jumping point. It kind of touches all the notes you need. She's 18 at the time. She's kind of just getting started. She's still very much a barbarian in that aspect, and really cool. And the new Mark Russell is just not there. But I am off topic.
I'll have to check it out because I know that our own host JJ hates Red Sonja. So,
in general, or just this book?
No, he's not here to defend himself, so I'm not going to say my feelings on it.
All right, fair enough.
But okay. So about Second Coming, it was funny. Like I enjoyed the aspect that I did feel in a way that they were poking at the religious aspects, but do I think it's underhanded? Absolutely. Do I think that they are pushing a pro-religious review? Yeah, I believe that. But Matt, I also kind of agree with you where they are kind of poking fun at it at the same time. So overall, I think they try to balance it, and I think they failed. I do.
I can get behind that.
Yeah. Do I think that, to answer the question as reviewers, did we like it? Did we somewhat like it? Did we not like it so much? No, I didn't like it. I mean, when I think of a comic book, I want something that's going to bring me in, get me involved in the story. This didn't do it for me. I didn't expect it to, so to be fair, it probably didn't stand a fair chance with me anyways. But there's been books that we've read where I was like, oh, I'm not gonna like it, and then I ended up loving it and have the full series on my back counter. But it doesn't hit for me. I just think that it failed as what it's trying to be. Like, again, I don't see anything wrong with being a Christianity book. If that's what you are, then nail it. But I think when you get into trouble of balancing it, it gets into some dicey waters, and I don't think that you really should, because you're trying to pull in what I feel is you're trying to pull in an audience that new readers to the Bible, kind of like what Nick was saying, and it failed. Like, if you're going to be something, be something. Don't try to half-ass it, because I feel like it failed that way. But I did like the art. I do think that they had some great one-liners. I don't think it's a horrible book. I don't. It's just not for me, and I'm assuming people who like more of stories and I mean, if you read Saga, you're probably not gonna like this book. It's just, I don't know. It failed for me. That's really pretty much all I've got to say. But
Okay.
I will say this, though. I kind of disagree. I don't remember who said it, or maybe none of you guys said it, and I'm just making it up in my own mind. But I do think that the book is needed just because it's something new for somebody that I haven't actually ever read a book like this. And as you know, as a writer, kudos to you for bringing something out that nobody else has really done, as far as I know. I could be completely wrong. Cody loves to say that I'm unread with a gauntlet of books, which is true. So as far as I know, there hasn't been a lot of books that are like this. So kudos to the writer for even attempting it. I am with Nick on when he says that I would not put my name attached to it. I don't blame Vertigo either for wanting to put their name on it. But at the same time, kudos for Ahoy putting their name on it, because it is going to be controversial. It's going to bring up all kinds of questions, concerns. What they're doing is making a media market so people read it. Any press is good press, even if it's negative press. I mean, we're sitting here talking about it because it's controversial. So kudos to Ahoy for taking a chance on it. I do hope that it gets better in the long run. I don't know what direction they're going to go with it. Who knows? I'm not going to know because I'm not going to read it. So if you guys do, let me know how that works out. But that's all I got to say on it.
All right. Guys, I think that summarized it pretty well. How about we move on?
We should.
I think so. That got into some heady territory. Maybe we'll save the rest of that conversation for a R-rated Comic Watchers After Dark show someday.
Yeah, there's so much more to go into historically and societally on the impact of ideas like this and what they can do to people. Disappointing.
Word. I got you. All right, so let's go somewhere positive then. Let's talk about Invisible Woman #1 from Marvel. It is written by Mark Waid with art by Mattia de Iluis. It is the First Lady of the Marvel Universe's first solo series. It takes Sue out of her natural element and puts her in a spy setting, which should be a no-brainer given her power set, but oddly, nobody outside of Mark Waid has ever thought to tap into. This story has its genesis in the last S.H.I.E.L.D. series, 4th issue, which, yes, was by Mark Waid. That's from about 2013, I think, maybe 14. So it's been a little while since anybody's gotten to tap into this side of Sue Storm. Brian, why don't you go first?
Damn it! I thought you were gonna go with Nick this time.
I'll go with
No,
Nicholas.
no, right, I know. But usually I'm. No, never mind. So I actually really like the book. It has two of my favorite characters. When I first started Comic Watch, I did this whole Fantastic Four because I didn't know anything about it. So it was pre last August because it was right before Fantastic Four came back. So they were on a hiatus, all that good stuff. So what ended up happening was I read a whole bunch of things, and I was most critical about Sue because when she first started out, she was always seemed to be this. How do I say it? Like she always seemed to be the victim almost when it first started, and then as you go on, because I read it from like 55, and they gave me like little arcs and reader. Like I read a whole bunch of stuff from them and created an article. So then I turned into the bigger fan of Sue because you've seen her grow. And as comic book fans, you see your characters grow. So seeing her grow and then now having her own title, which to the best of my knowledge is her first own title ever. I love that she's stepping away and finally gets the spotlight after what? Almost math.
58 years.
58 years. Okay, I almost said 60. Close enough, right? Right? Come on. So after 58 years, she gets her own title finally. That's amazing. And I love it because it also had a surprise at the end of one of my other favorites, which is Black Widow. I'll pretty much read anything with Black Widow. I even read the Twins run. Yeah. So it was a
The less
good
it's said about that, the better.
Huh?
The less it's said about that, the better, right? Is that what I'm implying?
Can we just erase that whole thing?
No.
But anyways, it has her in it. I love that she stepped away from the Fantastic Four to create her own like little run. I believe it's a mini. I haven't actually even read up about it.
5 issues.
Yeah, I'll take it. Like I don't care. Like I give me some Sue, give me some Black Widow. As far as I know, they've never teamed up before, other than like the big books like Onslaught and maybe a couple others. So for me, this is awesome. It has two of my favorite strong female characters in a book. I'm excited. I can't wait to read the next one. I think it's going to be a hit. The art is stellar. Matt, I know you said something about it kind of being CGI. I love it because it feels more painted rather than... I like different types of art. Like if you've ever read any of my reviews or actually any of my conversations on here, I always talk about art more than the story because the art's what brings me in. It's the colors. It's how people are drawn. I respect that. Like I'm heavily tattooed, so I love the fact that it brings art to it. For me, comic books and art go. I mean, you can't have one without the other, obviously, but it's what brings me in. I will rather not read a story if the art is bad. Like that, for me, it can kill a book. So I think the art is stellar. I think that the story is actually really cool. But I will say this though, it can go really cheesy really quick. It just depends on how the writers want to go with it. It can be a strong, kick-ass book, and I hope it does because the first one was really cool. We'll see how this ends up. Matt, what are your thoughts on it? Or I'm sorry, Nick, what are your thoughts on it? You both have beards. You guys look all the same to me. No, just
So we'll just skip Matt then. No, I liked it. I'm in your shoes, Brian. Before you did the Fantastic Four deep dive, I haven't done that yet, and I know I need to. It's part of like earning your stripes as a comic fan almost. This is Marvel's first family. This is really fundamental things you should know. And I've only read them within events like Secret Wars and stuff like that, where they're not the main focus. So this was kind of a fun introduction into a more finite view of Marvel's first family. You get almost this matriarchal sense out of this strong woman character, and I was here for it. It was great. The artwork was just fantastic. I love the difference between her prior stuff versus the modern day. I thought that transition was really cool, and the costume changes and stuff like that. But ultimately, it just worked. It it was a fun story. It knew what it should be doing, and it hit all of those points like right when you needed them to happen. And somebody coming into it with little to no experience with the character, I didn't have any problems. I wasn't searching for meaning in her motive or anything like that. It was very clear cut and enjoyable stuff. My only complaints really would be that there isn't enough tie to the other characters in the Fantastic Four, because that's what they're trying to do. They really brought it away, and it's not really a complaint. It's just a personal issue I had with it. I was hoping for a little bit more in seeing her be the stronger one among all of them, but I'm sure it might come in the future. But all of that was gone by the time Black Widow happened at the end. I was so badass to see that happen and bring those two together and what they can do. So really exciting stuff.
Real quick though, I did like how they started Nick Fury off as white and then transitioned him into what we know him now as the black character. I thought that was hilarious. Like, I think somebody didn't even notice it when they're reading it, which I thought was really cool, because I mean it's so transparent that we're used to both of them that we no longer question it. So for me, it just as an observation, it was kind of cool because I only thought of it afterwards, because I was like, because when I saw that it was the white one, I was like, oh, I forget that he's white in the book, and then they transitioned him to the black one, and I was like, oh my god, how is nobody gonna notice this? And it's like the least part of it that nobody's talked about, and I like that aspect of it.
Well, I mean, it's his son though. It's Nick Fury Jr.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, the black Nick Fury is Nick Fury Jr. She even calls him Junior in the right at the beginning of her conversation with him. And okay, I think sorry to invalidate your awe there.
I don't think it invalidates it at all. I think that both of y'all are equally right in that respect to what it has been in the past, and their willingness to do this was just awesome. Yeah, like maybe it's not necessarily we don't notice, but maybe it's that we do notice, and they're not willing to, ignore that fact that we would catch on to something like that.
Well, and it's important too that not only to mark the passage of time, but using the first Nick Fury is simply an acknowledgement that yes, he still exists within the history of the Marvel Universe. Like, he was taken out so poorly from the Marvel Universe, and Nick Fury Jr. was shoehorned in so ham-fistedly. And it's been almost a damn decade now since that stuff happened, but it still galls me. And I don't want to turn into a grumpy old fan or get too far off topic with it, but...
Wait. I have so many questions.
Okay.
So from
Go.
So from my understanding is that he was from the world 616, or the Ultimate Universe.
He who?
Nick Fury, when he was black, when he became Samuel
L. Jackson?
Right.
Okay.
So that was the original Nick Fury, right? In that world.
In the Ultimate Universe, which I think is the 1610, if you want to get numerical with it.
We don't. Okay, so...
Nerds!
Right. So that's him, and then once the universes collided, when Secret Wars happened, yada, 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 all the universes combined, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sort of.
So, but
not really. Basically, they kept Miles Morales.
Right, but essentially...
I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, that was what happened.
Right, but essentially that's what was supposed to happen, right?
Theory on paper, yeah.
Okay. So, when did he become his son?
Okay. So, at the end of the Fear Itself event series from 2011, which sucked, and I wish JJ was here to chime in with how much he thinks it sucks, because it's pretty funny. It's Thor-centric, so it's relevant to him. But anyway, they introduced, there was a Fallout miniseries, because of course you got to cash in by having an epilogue Fallout miniseries, yada yada, where they introduce the Black Nick Fury, or his son rather. So he's just kind of out there. He's, it's really awkward. He's there. Then a couple years later, when they did the original Sin event series, they effectively wrote the OG Nick Fury to they basically wrote him out of continuity by turning him into a 95-year-old genocidal lunatic. And I'm not making that up or exaggerating. He actually does blow up whole planets to protect Earth. And it's horrible. So anyway, he just kind of gets written out and gone. And then they just awkwardly transition Nick Fury Jr. into his role. And nobody really seems to question this in continuity. It's bad. It's just not
Well,
cool.
it's probably because they all think it's the same person, just from a different universe.
Yeah, and see, then it gets even more muddled by what you're saying with Secret Wars merging 616 and the 1610, because you were supposed to get this merging, but really we only got Miles Morales. And the Nick Fury of the Ultimate Universe, just like 99.9% of the Ultimate Universe, just sort of went away. So anyway, back to Invisible Woman after that incredibly sidebar.
Sorry, guys. I needed education because apparently...
No, it's cool. It's like super dumb and confusing.
It's also relevant.
To be fair, in 2011, I don't even think I was reading comics. I took like a 10-year break because, life.
Fair enough. So my take on Invisible Woman is this series kicked all the right ass. I'm a huge fan of taking characters out of their natural environments and temporarily, at least, putting them someplace different. At the end of the day, Sue is always going to be a member of the Fantastic Four first, but giving her this side gig where she does, espionage, spy type stuff is awesome because it makes sense. I mean, she can turn freaking invisible. She would be the ultimate spy asset. It just kind of blows my mind that nobody thought of this before now. It took until whenever Mark Waid wrote that one issue of S.H.I.E.L.D. That, frankly, that was only published as a series to hype the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, for anybody to take this route with Sue. But Sue's a badass. I mean, ever since she became Invisible Woman under John Byrne's tenure back in 1982, so 37 years ago, she's just been slowly getting more and more and more of a badass. And such a far cry from what you observed, Brian, of the, oh, my darling Reed version of the character, which is very pre-women's lib. And, just a product of her time. Go on.
Sorry. Well, that was at the beginning, like in the early 60s, that was where it was. And then I ended the series when she took out the entire Avengers with like just a shield blast in the final run of Fantastic Four. So I completely got to see when they took the kids away, when the Thing was in prison for murder, Reed was going crazy or maybe even kidnapped, and she wasn't able to see her kids anymore. The what is it? The Foundation, Fantastic Foundation? Future Foundation. So she leveled the entire Avengers with it. So I mean, I got to see her grow, and seeing her in this solo, just kind of like kicking ass, being her own independent woman. Like, I love it. Like, give me more of this. Marvel, read my lips. Give me more.
Well, people, you heard the man. Buy this comic so Marvel makes more just like it. Yeah, so the story, totally kick-ass. Very out of left field, but also very logical. On the art side, to your comment, it kind of reminded me of unfinished CGI. Like, the rendering needed a couple more passes. And it's not bad art by any means, but I was looking at it and I was thinking, man, if this guy put just a little more detail into it, he would look a lot like Esad Rabik. And that was what made me think of the CGI comparison. But neither here nor there. It's fine. It's good. It's good art. So Sue Storm kicks ass. 4 more issues to go. Hell yeah, I'm all in. Nick, what did you think?
I I liked it. I believe I said a lot of what I mainly thought of the book. It was it was a badass time, and that's what I wanted out of this book. Because I didn't come from a lot of knowledge on Fantastic Four, so it delivered everything I wanted. The spy aspect, yeah, it worked on such a natural level. I loved that aspect of it because she's invisible. This is obviously where she should be, and it's such a great avenue to explore her own strength as an individual.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, it took her out of her natural environment, but she was very true to her character throughout the whole thing. Her I won't, her entire line about I will not kill, and it's a challenge, of course. It's international espionage. You better be ready to kill, of course. And Sue sticks to that line. No, I won't do it. That's the line I won't cross. She was, strong, but um, but still Sue. So okay, I think that's about it on Invisible Woman. Nick gave us his thoughts twice. My bad. That's what you get for having a substitute host.
But it's worth hitting those notes because what people like to complain about maybe ham-fisting diversity at Marvel in that latest agenda, but this is a direct flag that you can do it correctly. And this is what Marvel should be doing with their characters. They're exploring the right avenues. They're doing it correctly. They're doing good shit, and this is what needs to happen. Like Brian said, give me more.
Absolutely. And if I can plug our site for just a second, I'm really curious to hear what our resident Fantastic Four writer J.A. Flood has to say about this, because he's been loving Fantastic Four for just about its entire existence, and his reviews basically are mini essays, and they're not to be missed.
So if you're a fan of Fantastic Four, you've got to check out his stuff. It's a delight every time they drop.
Yeah, it's a type of read that just makes you want to deep dive more into the FF.
Absolutely.
And fully understand why they're the cornerstone of Marvel. So, with that said, I think we're about wrapped up on Invisible Woman. So, last but not least, we have Batman Universe #1 by Brian Michael Bendis and Nick Darrington. This series, or mini-series rather, collects the previously Walmart exclusive material from DC's series of oversized comics that shipped exclusively to them. It's a companion piece to Superman Up in the Sky, which collects the Tom King stuff from the same venue. But this story is about Batman and the Riddler and a street-level mystery, and I could not have loved it more just for sheer fun value. Nick, take it away.
Well, I guess the discussion on Second Coming has got me feeling controversial, so I'm just going to start by saying Bendis should be on Batman. Just 100%. This is proof why he needs to take on that title. And obviously he works better with street-level heroes. That's something that we've all talked about before. But this gives him a chance to explore the ultimate street-level hero dynamic. And he does so great with this. It's a little lighthearted, but I've come to expect that out of his take on Batman and little stories that he's done so far. But the way the story progresses and it just keeps introducing more and more characters, it really lives up to that Batman universe name. And I missed out on the prior prints of this, so I thought it was great that they decided to reprint it and get it in a channel that I had regular access to, because I picked this one up off the shelves all day. This was a great Batman story. And ultimately, this is what I'm missing from King's Run. This fun escapism dynamic that Batman brings, and it's not there. I haven't been following along with King like I should, but his Batman takes is just so opposite of what we're getting in a story like this that people would call a throwaway Batman story, but really it's one of the better Batman books I've read in a couple of months. So it's not really that much of a throwaway story. It's something you should check out. Um, and spoiler alert at the end, I thought the introduction of Green Arrow was probably my favorite part. It just, like, the best ending I could hope for in a book like this. After the villains were introduced one after another, I was like, okay, but what other part of the Bat family are we going to get that's probably expected? And then Green Arrow comes in, just loved it. Fanboyed out for a minute. Great stuff. It's what I want out of a Batman comic. And with Detective Comics, not being quite what it should be the past couple of arcs, it's just nice to sit down with a Batman book and actually really enjoy it and put it down and want to talk to other people about it. It's something that you should definitely look out for. And I'm on the campaign for Bendis to take over Batman. I know there's been shifts lately with Tom King and him taking Batcat, so something's on the horizon. Is this a prelude, maybe? Are they trying to get us normalized to the idea of Bendis on Batman? I sure hope so. But I'm going to enjoy this for what it is. Looking forward to the next issue and what more they're going to bring in this Batman universe title with all these different characters. It's hard to find many complaints with it. I loved it across the board, really.
Yeah, I don't think I can say much that you didn't. If you've been missing just street level, fun to read, accessible Batman, this is definitely your go-to. It's Batman versus the Riddler. That's it. I mean, yeah, of course there's some twists and turns and wrinkles and ebbs and flows and ups and downs and stuff. I ran out of opposites. But this book proves, and I say this, I'm enjoying Bendis on Superman. I am. I didn't think I would, but this proves he should absolutely, without a doubt, be writing Batman. That he always excels with the street level stuff. It's where he finds his most naturalistic voice. Having cut his teeth on crime fiction in the earliest years of his career. And so, yeah, I mean, Batman, you just couldn't find a more natural fit for his talents as a writer. I was a little thrown by Nick Darrington at first just because his art has a slightly more cartoony bent to it. And I thought he was a great fit for the last volume of Doom Patrol, for example. But, I mean, by 5-6 pages into this issue, I was enjoying myself so much that I just stopped noticing. The art and the story were just so perfectly in sync. So, yes, please, if you just want to read a damn good Batman story, do yourself a favor, pick up Batman Universe. And that is actually it for that book because Brian is on the naughty list and he didn't read it. It's okay. He's drinking enough wine for both of us, so kudos to you, buddy. So that's it for our reviews this week. Let's move to our last segment. Brian, get you back in the conversation a little bit. Have you had a chance to read anything this week?
No.
No. Okay. Hey.
No, just
you're still. Hey, I know you're still getting settled in up there in your new home. Are there any books next week that you're looking forward to?
Well, just a quick update on the moving. Like, I finally got everything here. I think last week I was going back to Tucson to get all my stuff. I drove 24 hours to make sure I was back, unpacked everything, or not even unpacked everything, just unloaded everything. Then I had to work on Monday, and I've been working since then, so my time's limited. I tried to unpack as much as I can, but my house still looks like a freaking zoo right now. So I mean, as far as being able to read, no, I haven't been able to. But
well, you have your statues and your trades set up behind you.
Yeah, so that's what I did yesterday. Like, so I get home at crazy, or it depends how long I work, but I got home a little early because I had a training, and when you're in training, they let you out a little bit early. So I was able to, and I worked from about 6 p.m. to midnight, just unpacking everything.
Ew.
And then I still had to go buy a bunch of stuff. Like, I didn't have a microwave. I bought a toaster. So I'm ready to tap. Like, I'm done with this.
Almost the weekend, man.
It is. This is actually the first weekend where I don't have to go anywhere and I have to fly anywhere. I just get to unpack and finally be normal. Like, my dog's probably like, he doesn't know what to do right now. He's like, I don't like it here. But it's fine. Also, I found out that my car doesn't like rain. What I mean by rain is, I guess the roads are really slippery. Like in Arizona, if it's raining, the water just soaks into everything because it's so dry. So you don't really feel it. Well, here it's always wet, and which is fine. I mean, that's part of the reason why I moved here. So my car, like when I was trying to go to work yesterday, I learned how to hydroplane really well because that's what I did for 45 minutes going to work. So it's been fun. It's been really fucking exhausting. I don't know what I'm looking forward to. This is my life right now. You just heard me like completely vent.
All right.
I'm drinking wine.
Woo! Nick, what you got?
Okay, so The Walking Dead ended abruptly and felt like it threw my indie comic into a chaotic tailspin. I wasn't sure what I should be reading now, so I just dove into, excuse me, Red Sonja and Vampirella from Dynamite, because Comic Watch has been on Dynamite's retweet list a few times before, and I like to support them because they're willing to go places that I think comics should go.
I will say that Vampirella and Red Sonja has been a hot topic. So for those of you guys who don't know all the workings behind this, we have about 25 workers that work for Comic Watch. So it's really interesting to see all of our reactions. So we have this group chat, or I guess it's workplace Facebook, and there's several different chats. Like we have the news, the writers, and then we have a free-for-all, and then we have, of course, the Comic Watch, etc., or the Comic Watch show. So it's interesting to see people's reaction when they explain something or a book that they're reading. Vampirella and Red Sonja have definitely been a hot topic, a very controversial topic. So it made me so I'm with Nick. Like, you tell me I'm going to hate something, I'm going to read it and find out what I like. Especially because it's one of the persons was to deal more with body image. And I have a big problem with that. Like, it doesn't matter what you look like or what you present as. Is it a good book? It's not based on body image. It shouldn't dictate what the story or the art is about. So I'm with you, Nick. I actually want to jump on some Vampirella and Red Sonja, basically just to spite people, because I'm that dick. So we'll see what happens. Like, I'll actually ask you after the show which one, or actually, which series are you reading? That maybe people who are watching this wants to read it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started, where I guess the rational spot would be is the new reboot with Red Sonja and Dynamite. They made a huge deal out of it earlier this year. They're bringing Red Sonja back in all of her glory, and they brought Mark Russell with them. So the story had a lot of potential, and then it just kind of keeps going on and not really going anywhere that you really want it to go.
Okay.
So that made me look elsewhere. And they have another mini right now from, I forget who it's from. You'll have to excuse me. They're brilliant. Brain fart. But it's called Birth of the She-Devil. You can check it out. The first issue dropped last month. The next issue dropped today, I believe, Wednesday the 11th. Great series. Good jumping on point. It's literally her coming into her title as a She-Devil. So it's what you want to see out of a comic like this. But for a story to really hook you and make you a fan of the character, ultimately Gail Simone's run is, I think, where it's at. It's iconic and everything you want it to be out of Red Sonja. It's just really cool stuff, and she's a big fan of the character, and what they did with it was just fine. I'm a longtime fan now because of Gail Simone's run on that. Vampirella, I'm still struggling with, and she's been a character not unlike Red Sonja that she brings a lot of controversy because of her appearance and the male gaze fantasy aspect that men have used her for so long. But this is a character with such modern relevance, and all of the potential is there for such a great story that they're doing with Red Sonja right now, I believe. And Vampirella, they're struggling to find their footing in how to approach that. So for what I'm looking forward to, I'd like to talk about Christopher Priest's upcoming Vampirella reboot. He's coming out with a #1 that had everybody talking because of this controversial interview he did. And yeah, it was a wild story. They're trying to approach Vampirella from a feminist perspective that doesn't forget she's this blood-sucking vampire, of course. But he's also in the same interview talking about how he's uncomfortable on how to act around women in the Me Too generation because he's unsure of how his actions towards them might be perceived, and he's afraid to interact with women. And I couldn't help but think, is this really who you want to get behind to reboot Vampirella and to sell that story or that idea of this character, Dynamite, with the #1 issue? So
I kind of feel like maybe he is actually fearful of the backlash that could happen, but I also kind of feel like anytime that you mention Me Too, media automatically takes a look into seeing what it is, and I think that is a good public, like from a publicist standpoint, it would be a great opportunity to tap into something that most people aren't going to know. Like for example, like, I mean, if you go to hashtag Me Too, you see a bunch of different things. You don't necessarily think of comic books, although there's definitely a place for it in that realm. So I think that maybe he's not as fearful as he says about it, but maybe hoping that he gets a little publicity from the comments that he's making, or he really is fearful and he's probably not the best person to write this book. Like, I mean, let's be honest, she is over-sexualized the way that her outfit, uniform, whatever you want to call it is, but that doesn't take away from the fact that she's still an ass-kicking vampire who handles business. So I feel like you can be both. You can be anything. You don't have to wear a bikini to kick ass. You can wear, headdresses and be completely covered and still do that. But the character itself is known as over-sexualized. That's fine. That's who the character is. You like that. I don't want to get into that, but
no, I mean, she should own it. Like, that's part of her character.
Right.
Like,
And
be
that's
that
fine.
badass. But is Christopher Priest the person to make her own that and to write her as that badass?
Yeah.
We have to see, but I know that he's not going to be defined by that one aspect. He's going to approach this from a dynamic mindset, and I have not high hopes, but I do hope that he achieves something worthwhile with this book, because this is a character who needs it. Like, when you ask me about Red Sonja, I can point to a run specifically. Vampirella, people are hard-pressed to point to a run. She needs that iconic run.
Yeah, because I think right now, I don't want to say because I'm pretty unread when it comes to Vampirella, but the few books that I have read from her, like in the early 90s, it was more stronger. It was more stronger stories, etc. But I read recently one of her reboots. For whatever reason, they keep rebooting everything. I mean, not just Vampirella, but every freaking book. So I think that it's lost it. I think they've hid behind the sexuality, thinking that her how do I say it? Like, her sex appeal is gonna sell it more than the story sells it. And I think that's a big mistake, because I think that that's fine if you want to, sex up a character, but it can't just be female. It needs to be across the board. Like, let's be honest. I mean, all the male characters all have six packs. Like, nobody's okay. But my point is that you need to have a strong story. You need to have a good background. You need to have a bunch of things. You cannot just rely on sex appeal to sell the book. Yeah, maybe it has for 13-year-olds for a couple of years, but now in this comic book world that we live in today, that's not going to sell. It's not going to work. Your fan base is educated, really well read, because comic books are at our fingertips now. Like, literally, I could be reading a comic book and talking to you just on my phone, like with Comixology and Marvel Unlimited, DC Universe, etc. So fans are much more read than they were, 5 years ago. So you cannot rely just on sex appeal. You cannot rely just on a story. Like, it needs to have a full gauntlet of good material in order to make a good book. So, Priest, I hope you kick ass on this. We're counting on you. Make us want to read, because otherwise it's just going to flop, and people are just going to flap to it.
And the cycle continues.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's definitely going to be people that are going to check it out just to see if those ill-advised comments he made in that interview somehow translate to the story. But there's also just going to be diehard Christopher Priest fans that check it out because he's such a damn talented writer. I know Cody was looking forward to it because Christopher Priest is like one of his favorites. So we will just see. As for me, I haven't had a ton of time to dive into back issues this week, so I've mostly just been reading books from last week. I want to take a second to tie back to what we were saying on how damn well Brian Michael Bendis writes street-level heroes. I fucking loved Event Leviathan #2.
Yes.
Oh my god. I didn't really know what to expect from this miniseries, especially after it started as a Superman story and now it's not a Superman story, which is weird. But whatever, because the first 2 issues of the series have been so solid. Again, it's Brian Michael Bendis back in that street-level wheelhouse with his all-time great artistic partner in crime, Alex Maleev, in tow. But the way that they set issue 2 up, there's a twist in it, and as to what you think you're reading one thing, and then the narrative just completely flips on its head, and you realize you were reading something else the entire time, and Bendis plays it so smoothly. Even if you did not read the Leviathan Rising arc that set this up, I don't care. Dude, just check the series out. It's awesome. As for what I'm looking forward to, this coming week sees the debut of Jimmy Olsen, #1 at DC, courtesy of Matt Fraction and Steve Lieber. The book does not have Brian thrilled, but it looks as though from the previews that we've seen and the preview that we got in the recent Superman Leviathan Rising 80-pager, that it's just going to be a really left of center story that is wonderful and weird and celebrates the wackier aspects of the DCU in a great fun way. And Matt Fraction is the perfect writer for that, as long as he doesn't get too cutesy with it, which with Fraction is always kind of one of those things you got to watch out for. But Steve Lieber on art is a great pairing for him. If you did not read Superior Foes of Spider-Man, he drew it. He was perfect. He's perfectly suited for that tone of story. And I think he'll be great on Jimmy Olsen. So that's me for this week. And I think that's our show for the week. What do you think, guys? Any final thoughts?
I didn't mean to offend with Second Coming. It warranted that discussion.
Didn't offend me, buddy. Power to you. I do want to say, and I wish I had brought this up at the beginning of the show, but oh well. We are on a couple of new platforms. We are now on Stitcher. And what was the other one, Nick?
Podbean.
Well, I thought we were already on Podbean.
Oh.
Were we not? Okay, well, Podcast Addict, that was the other one.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, in addition to iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, etc., 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 we can now be found there as well as many, many other platforms where you can find finer podcasts. That is it for us this week from Comic Watch and the Comic Watchers Show. Brian, will you say bye to everybody?
Toodaloo, motherfuckers. See you next week.
Oh, no! Bye!